What women reflect, men become. I would like to discuss about the culture of prostitution, and we're going to go back in time, and we're going to look at the esoteric practice of why we have this ancient old culture of prostitution. Okay, it's very, very old. It's been here since, we could say, the Egyptian times. Okay, so we're going to look at the esoterics of that. Okay, so when I mentioned the quote from Yogi Bhajan, what women reflect, men become. Okay, so in the ancient past, we could say before the patriarchal age, which is around 12,000 years, we lived in a matriarchal age. And basically, the matriarch represents the feminine. Okay, we could call it the goddess, divinity, dignity. But overall, it is in Egyptian culture, the vulture. You could see it as the eagle or the hawk. And basically, it is the aspect of self that has a very pronounced connection to the visionary, okay, or the visionary architect. So during the matriarchal age, we had what was called the golden age. Now, this isn't documented in our history textbooks because if you really look at our textbooks, we don't go really past, you could say, 7,000 years unless we're cavemen, okay, or hunters and gatherers in the, the Paleolithic period kind of thing. But in the Vedic tradition, we, like I've mentioned before, we follow a 26,000 year planetary cycle, okay? And 12,000 years, we have been in this patriarchal experiment, okay? And we can see it beginning around the Egyptian pharaoh, okay? The rise of the Egyptian pharaoh during that pre-dynastic period, okay? When we started to see this unification of Upper and Lower Egypt and seeing a rulership called the pharaoh, okay, the authoritative ruler. That's when we start to see this model in our history of the patriarch, okay? And the patriarch represents the masculine side of ourselves. So our body, what's going on inside is very much what's going on at the macro level, like out there in the big world, and religion and ideology and culture and institution. So within ourselves, we have two hemispheres of the brain, okay? And in Egyptian culture, it is represented with the beetle, okay? The beetle has like two shells that kind of fit together, okay? There's a head and then there's a body, and the body is comprised of two seeming shells that connect. So that is symbolic for the hemispheres of the brain. So we have a hemisphere of the brain that is masculine and a hemisphere of the brain that is feminine, okay? And also in Egyptian culture, it is represented by, you'll see two symbols, okay? The vulture and the serpent, and they're usually together. Sometimes you'll see them on like a pharaoh's, we could see like a headdress, okay? And it's like the vulture and the serpent together at the head, okay, in like a Egyptian art, and that's just representing the two hemispheres of the brain, the masculine and the feminine. So when we think about the vulture, again, the eagle or the hawk, it's that visionary, okay? It is to envision creation, to visualize potential, to alchemize that potential and bring it here into birth, into fruition, into fertility, okay? Fertility as in you are birthing that into a applied science, okay? That's kind of what we're doing through thousands of years of practicing these, esoteric teachings or these mantras or these healing practices, these healing arts, medicine, herbalism, these kinds of things. Even when it comes to the mind, when it comes to the body, when it comes to really working out the energy field, it has been very much, we are cultivating that feminine ability to channel into ourselves that vision, okay, that visionary, that vision, and really integrate into applied science. Okay, so when we think of applied science, that's that masculine side of ourselves. Okay, that's rational, that's you are implementing it, it has structure, it has discipline, it's consolidated, it's fortified, these kinds of things. Okay, so when it comes to our individual internal, like what's going on, is we are constantly between both hemispheres of the brain having this conversation between, we could say, the vulture, which is the visionary, and the serpent, which is like kind of the architect. He's serpenting through the ground, and he's seeing like the mechanics of, you know, what we kind of know as like biology, and look at the flower and like what brings the flower to life, and the tree and what brings the tree to life, and looking at the kind of the details, okay, the details that create the structure to the organism. So when we have these two things together, the vulture and the serpent, we have the visionary architect. So it's one thing to be visionary, but if you don't have any sort of ability to organize it, you don't know how to deliver it. You don't know how to make it into like applied science, into an actual grounded establishment. So when we think of the patriarchal age, we think of this huge emphasis on establishment. Either we're establishing pyramids, we're establishing our legacy, or we are establishing a business, or establishing a community, a city, a roadway. You could say, ships across the sea. We talk about paths like the Silk Road. These kinds of things are all establishments. Okay, we think of like the great Romans, and even we think of aqueducts or agriculture. It's all establishing. We're establishing ourselves. We're getting a routine. We're getting organized. Okay, so, but what really fuels that is that visionary, that feminine. So when Yogi Bhajan mentions the quote of what women reflect, men become, it's really showing what the vision of woman becomes the structure of society. So if the woman is reflecting, or if the woman's vision is, let's say, not a lot of respect, then what's going to happen is the structure for society is it's gonna become that. It's gonna mirror that. So when we think about generating energy, generating creation, generating fertility, like what keeps things like continuing to grow and go through death and rebirth, that's that feminine part of ourselves. Okay, and then simply they become that. So when we look at the Egyptian times, okay, getting to this whole culture of prostitution that we have and had for a very long time, men inside of themselves, they have a woman, and it's, like I said, the hemispheres of the brain. Man and woman have the same sort of, man and woman mind, okay? Rational mind is imaginative mind. Scientific mind, more creative, musical mind, okay? They're both working together. You need vision to architect. Or what are you architecting? Like, it just gets kind of, we don't know what we're doing. There's no sense of purposeful, higher vision. Okay. That's what the visionary does. It gives us a sense of a grander scheme for things. Okay, things become more synergistic. Things become more of like a synchronicity. Okay, rather than just like we're building a house, but it's just sitting there and there's no energy to it. There's no liveliness. So that's kind of what the woman inside of man and woman provides, that liveliness. So when you think of the man building the house and the woman, she decorates it with all of the knowledge, the experience, and the wisdom that she has gathered from flying across, the sky as like the Hulk, and integrating that into the home, giving that home a sense of liveliness, a sense of communion with a grander scheme. with a grander scheme. Okay, so that's that woman when we talk about that woman creating the home. Okay, so in the ancient past, when we really began to get into the patriarchal age, we can think of like Egypt, okay, because a lot of us, our history books all goes back to Egypt, even though there is more. Okay, it's called it's hidden, but there's more. So when men began to suppress the feminine side of themselves, okay, I'm not sure exactly what went down when the matriarchal age began to, I guess, decline or fade out, and the patriarchal began to rise. I'm not sure how that transition was, okay, during that time, because that was probably, we could say maybe like 14,000 years ago when we started to really see that overlap between leadership of the matriarch and leadership of the patriarch beginning to rise. Okay, but when the patriarch began to suppress the feminine side of himself, what happened is he lost his ability to see the grander scheme of things. So he had a knowledge of the serpent and how to really like ground things, how to establish things, how to build things. But without that grander vision, man, or the patriarch, began to get kind of wandering around. And that's what we know as the Dark Ages, where we're wandering around in these lower dimensions, and we don't know how to navigate. So navigation on how to like transurf reality, basically. Okay, it was like these dimensions, how to basically remodel and reconstruct these dimensions, lower dimensions, into higher dimensions, and how to basically alchemize and manifest ourselves. It's more of the eagle. It's the eye of the eagle. But when man in the patriarchal age began to suppress the woman inside of himself, what we saw, as well as outside, okay, because internal and external are kind of same, sort of same. It's a reflection, it's a mirror. When we started seeing culturally these women that are very much oppressed, meaning they are basically, it's withheld from them the practice of being an alchemist, the practice of being a manifester, the practice of medicine. Like we talk about herbalism, okay, we know that herbalism, the practice of it, is illegal in America. It's illegal right now. To be a practitioner of that, could kind of like sell that in a legitimate way. So when it was withheld from us as women, we slowly, through many generations, we slowly forgot how to alchemize. We forgot how to manifest. We forgot how to actually, what it means to be fertile, what it means to create. We lost that, or we forgot how to do that. Okay, we forgot. And therefore as man began to rise, as we continue down, many centuries, becoming the pharaoh, then the ruler, then the king, that kind of thing, he also lost his ability to be the visionary architect. Because both women and man are visionary architect. But since women began to reflect out into this planet, okay, that reflect out basically low self-worth, because when women are not being creative, when they're not being alchemists, what happens is a woman, when she's not practicing like her natural medicine, her natural herbalism, and her natural ability to envision emotional well-being, psychological well-being, and to practice that, when that's kind of faded away, women, we reflect out and we project out into our society anger, dissatisfaction, and unfulfillment. Okay, And when women is unfulfilled, meaning her creative, fertility is not being replenished, it's not growing anything within her, well then man, very much, becomes that as well. He doesn't know how to navigate. And when we don't know how to navigate gracefully, with a sense of wisdom, with a sense of grand scheme, we're kind of just doing whatever. It's just, and we can see a lot of that in our, kings and these pharaohs, where we're doing things and it doesn't quite make sense. We're having wars and they don't quite make sense. They're very commotional, and there's a lot of dilemma, and there's a lot of misunderstanding. So the root of you is have all this anger is because we just don't know how. We don't have the grand scheme. We don't have that visionary part of ourselves really activated, because we don't understand that actually comes from the feminine within man, and really heavily emphasized in a woman. Okay, we need that visionary. We need that clarity of mind, that innocence of mind, or we're kind of just, we're running into things. It becomes we're just have no sense of mastery going on. Okay, we don't really know what we're doing. Okay, and we feel like we don't know what we're doing, and then we get into this sort of disrespect with ourselves because we're just having all this mistake on life, and then it gets kind of funky. Okay, it gets kind of funky. What we see kind of right now, a little bit funky. So when it comes to prostitution and sex, okay, sex became a woman, and how she can basically, in the patriarchal age, that was the only thing woman could do, basically. Okay, when it talks about actual practice and a ritual of creation. Okay, so she couldn't practice medicine or herbalism. She couldn't practice any sort of, esoteric things. That was definitely nope, that's not happening. But she could practice, childbearing. That's the only thing she was allowed to do. So as women, that's kind of what we think that we're used for, is just to procreate. Because everything else, every other option has been closed down. Every other roadway for us to express our creativity in an alchemist, manifesting way, it's been closed off. Okay, so as we women kind of just get bound to that, men, they needed the innocence of woman, because they didn't have the innocence of woman within themselves, their feminine aspect. And the innocence of woman, particularly, is equivalent to the essence of a child. It is so clear. It is such a pronounced access to divinity, dignity, the grand scheme, that man needed that. Because in order for them to truly, we can say, get a sense of mastery, or get a sense of elevation in their life, out of the swamps of, their whole fate of whatever they've been doing, they needed that higher energy. They needed that feminine innocence, that feminine dignity, that feminine divinity, in order to really elevate and begin to remedy and resolve their suffering and their paranoia and their hauntings. They needed that. So what began to happen is woman basically began to sell her sex, because she knew that sex, or just with a woman, okay, particularly what we call a Vestal Virgin, which is a very strong, powerful electromagnetic field of a woman who has that really pronounced alchemist and manifestor inside of her. What that did for a man is it really, you talk about, really activated him. Okay, it activated him. So after having sex with this Vestal Virgin, or this this very powerful electromagnetic, very wise old soul, shaman, wise woman, he was activated. He had a newfound gift, a newfound talent. Okay, and that talent and that gift, it became his elevation. It became the navigation, the wisdom that he needs to kind of remedy and resolve his hauntings and his suffering. And it became higher energy that helped him to transmutate all of that kind of dense, sticky, icky stuff. Okay, but what happened over many, many years and years and years and years and centuries of this whole, women basically selling that to men who are desperate for a higher energy, desperate for elevation, desperate for a sense of innocence to really, help them clean up their energy space, is women began to lose their dignity. They lost their innocence. So when we think about the Vestal Virgin became what we know as kind of a whorehouse, okay, a whorehouse, where men would go to this whorehouse. It would be very animalistic, and then the men would keep going back with different women and trying different women, because men know they need, especially these kinds of, fated men, fated to, the karmic justice that's probably going to be very heavy, fated to that. They would try to find a woman with innocence so powerful that it could elevate them, it could activate them in such a way where they could rewrite their karmic fate of the haunting and the suffering and the karmic justice. They could rewrite it. Because the feminine rewrites history, not the masculine. The feminine, it's installed in her, like in that part of the brain where we have it to rewrite fate and to rewrite our destiny into a higher elevated understanding. Okay? So when women lost that innocence, when they lost that sense of dignity, men, like I said, they would go to different women. They'd be like, I did this woman, I did that woman. I still don't feel activated. I don't feel transmutation of my animal self into, let's say, my visionary self. I still feel animalistic. I still feel impulsive, reactive, commotional, in my dilemma, in my fated cosmic justice that's just eerie and just haunting me. I still feel like that. It's because that Vestal version, it disappeared. Because what it truly is a woman who has dignity within herself. That's what gives her the power to be able to elevate a man's consciousness and to elevate his fated life into a higher destiny of purposeful direction, purposeful resolution, purposeful grand scheme of, wisdom and how to obtain it and how to master it, kind of thing. So how a woman, through, many centuries of prostitution, I mean, the whorehouses got really, really weird. Okay, I don't even want to channel that, but really funky in so many ways. When a woman has intercourse with a man who's not ready and not worthy to be in that presence of higher wisdom, okay, that the Vestal Virgin basically was an embodiment of. When she interlocks with that man's psyche, what it does is, if that man is not, we could say, not humble to her energy, it creates a disrespect. He dishonors her. And when we are dishonored as a woman, particularly through intercourse, it basically, we begin to take that on, the dishonor of ourselves and the disrespect of ourselves. And if you look culturally at women, not just, prostitution, but also kind of, our sex culture in general, we can see that there's a lot of disrespect going on, okay? With this, women, the way they treat themselves, the way men treat women, and disrespect is also, it's also not taking responsibility. That's kind of what disrespect is. You're not taking responsibility, okay? So what happened is women began to take that on. that whole not being responsible for their own dignity, for their own alchemy, for their own manifestation. They started to not take responsibility for that, and they started to not work on it. They started to not, remedy it, resolve it, and that over time we began to see that sex becomes, for man, it's pure animal. And even today, it's seen as pure animal, where men are getting that, but it just stays right here in the lower chakras, meaning it doesn't travel anywhere. Where, you get a stimulation of your second chakra, which is like your sense of control, your sense of security, your sense of, kind of pleasure, but it doesn't go anywhere else. Okay. And for man, if he's just purely there in these lower chakras, he's never going to have the vision. He's never going to have that wisdom or just that navigation on how he can manifest himself in an appropriate way, in a way where he can actually have breakthrough, a quantum leap, a spiritual revelation, or an authentic embodiment. He will never know that as long as he's just kind of lingering in those sort of, that cheap sort of animalistic, fucking or whatever. Okay? So culturally, that's kind of what we see in women. We don't even know that the feminine energy on this planet, and women and men, is the mirror in which society becomes. We have it inside of us to alchemize and to manifest, like rewriting destiny. We have it inside of ourselves. It's just we don't work it out. We don't know it. We think creation as procreate, and we need to create. That's why we just, procreate, even though we know we're not ready for that, or we don't have the sense of safety in our environment to actually do that. But we have to be creative, because we were not fulfilled if we're not being creative as women. Okay? We're not. We just feel kind of like a blah, or like lonely, and like, what am I supposed to do with my life? I have no idea, kind of thing. So right now as women, we're starting to see kind of an emergence of, we call this whole tantric sexuality, but a lot of it is still based off of sort of that animal impulse, or that stimulation. I need to stimulate my body. Okay? That's kind of what it is, I need to stimulate my chakras. But when we talk about the ancient practice of, the Vestal Virgin, before we talked about, her basically selling this sacredness with a man who was stuck or stagnant to kind of like help him activate himself and get moving. Before that, the sexual practice was very much for the higher activation of the woman. It wasn't for man's pleasure, actually. It was to strengthen the woman's electromagnetic field. Okay, not to just give, here's, I'll give you some sex, man, hope you give me money. No. That only became in the patriarchal age, okay, where we felt so limited. We felt so worthless as women. We're only worth having babies, and that's it. Our vision, our wisdom, our medicine, our healing is worthless. It has no purpose. So we felt very worthless. And that also what really degraded our natural ability to really rewrite and activate this planet, to really create alchemy and manifestation that really propels us into realities that can really benefit us all. We felt worthless. We didn't feel much about our lives. We didn't feel much at all. Very unfulfilled. But we pretend that we're fulfilled because at least we have kids, kind of thing. But there's so much more in the matriarchal age that we're doing that we are not aware of, okay? But with sexuality with a man, it was more so in this particular golden age that I am sensing, okay, it was more so of activating the woman, because when the woman is projecting and reflecting out like great value, like she values herself, the presence of that, the innocence of that to a man was in a tremendous empowerment, was a tremendous elevation for him. And he didn't need to have intercourse with her to actually feel that elevation, that higher vision, that sense of, I'm a visionary architect. He didn't need to do that. It's just, if he were to, have sexual energy exchange with her, it would be to help her feel even more worthy about herself, And in return, just that feeling of, like I said, projecting and reflecting out into this planet to her partner, that incredible love, incredible dignity and divinity, that is what gave him this sense of direction. That gave him his sense of the grand scheme, a sense of mastery. A mastery coming from like an applied science, from like a wisdom brought into an actual applied science. So that's kind of when we look at like the matriarchal age, and kind of the interaction between man and woman. But as we're moving into the future, we are exiting the patriarchal age, and we are going to see more of a matriarchal leadership rise. Because we need to balance it out, because we've been so heavily just patriarchal men rule the world, men rule the world kind of thing, and women, you just have my baby and then that's it kind of thing. That we need to have a matriarchal, we need to have women coming up and rising into a divine and beautiful and intelligent and dignified person, because that's what's going to balance it out. And when we start to see that, we're going to start to see culturally that there's going to be some more harmony between men and women. There's going to be less of this childhood anger crap, all of this anger that's been here for so long. We've never thought maybe the anger's there because women are unfulfilled. Okay, because they're not receiving support from men to really manifest their creative vision. They don't really have the support, so they're very kind of feeling stuck and very dense. So men are naturally dense, but when women are dense with men, it just creates an even denser planet. Okay? So when we talk about the balance of the scales, men are naturally dense because they're the snake, they can't fly kind of thing. But women can. So we have a more lightness. We have ability to really heal and resolve and remedy. So when we are kind of in a higher elevated state, what we do through the balance of the scales is we naturally kind of pull up the gravity of this planet. Okay, that's very heavy. We kind of naturally pull it up, giving this nice, we call this equilibrium from, dense realities of what we call about fated justice, or, this kind of cause and effect, and the mistake and confusion and, doubt and fear, these kinds of things. And we bring the balance between, let's say, unconditional love, compassion, understanding. And when we don't have that kind of higher grand scheme, when we don't have unconditional love, we don't have compassion, we don't have acceptance, we don't have transformation, resurrection, rebirth, these kinds of things, we are very much like just clueless, very clueless on how to resolve and how to discuss and how to have creative solution. Okay, so moving even further, we're going to see more of a balance coming on the planet. And with that balance, we're going to start seeing women becoming more fulfilled creatively. So women are not going to be so bound to have kids. Okay? Because they know there's other ways to feed that hunger to be creative. And they're beginning to discover that. Women are. Okay? So this whole, let me have 7 kids because I need to, that's sort of going to go away, okay? Slowly, in probably thousands of years. And then we're also going to see with the masculine that he's going to understand the value of a woman's esoteric sort of practice and her healing arts and her her medicine, or her you would call like witchcraft kind of thing, that's what is considered sort of thing. The value of that it actually brings clarity of mind. It brings a sense of like openness in the mind that helps a man to really look at things in a grander scheme, So he's going to understand the value to have a clear mind on this planet is truly a value. To not have so much scrambled misunderstanding and desperation and doubt. It's going to be truly value to be able to have this trust in self, the self-love in self, the ability to communicate with this planet and to see and to know how he can be a better man, a better businessman, a better politician, a better entrepreneur, these kinds of things. And that's going to be of true value. So we're going to start seeing kind of things even out. And when things kind of even out or, harmonize between this whole feminine, this masculine within ourselves and out there in the world, we're going to start seeing more creative solution because there's going to be more discussion going on. Okay, right now it's not really there because everyone on this planet is dealing with anger. Childhood anger, past life anger, cultural anger, religious anger, political anger, anger, everything, television anger, social media anger, it's just a lot. So if we can move past that, we're going to start seeing more of we're going to feel more nourished, and we're going to be more nourishing to our community rather than just kind of spilling out all of our anger and into our drugs and into our sex and into our disrespect of self and disrespect of other. Okay, so that's kind of the pathway. We're getting through the anger, and it's super heavy, very heavy. Okay, because we're recognizing now that we're getting more sensitive on the planet, we're recognizing, holy crap, what have we done to each other the last 3,000 years? Oh my God, what have we done to each other? I'm remembering this, and I'm like, what is this about? I'm angry, I'm pissed, kind of thing. We're dealing with that right now so that we're not screaming at each other and screaming at our dads and screaming at politicians, because we understand that is just simply the whole planet is experiencing that anger. Not just one group, not just two group, everybody, because we're getting sensitive to how we have really destroyed ourselves and polluted ourselves and didn't allow these higher energies to actually rise. But now it's really just the floodgate is being pushed through us, and it's literally there's no going back. It's moving through us at this time. It is almost like what we call a force, sort of, literally a force that is a force. So we're being forced to have a life force move through us, because if we don't, we will not survive on this planet. So with that, we talk about that Kundalini rising, or that, sensitivity. We're getting just more aware of the feminine, and we're learning that the feminine actually is the healer. The feminine is the medicine. The feminine is the cure. It is the person that rewrites the whole centuries of family anger that's going nowhere and has been stagnant, or rewrites our karma with our parents that's going nowhere and just leaving us stuck and stagnant. It rewrites mindsets, beliefs, religion. It's that medicine. And now it's being awakened and it's being encouraged because we have no choice. We need other options. We need to try something new, because our planet, unfortunately, is very destructive, and we see a lot of things indicating death. okay? A lot of death and decay and pestilence on this planet. So we are, it's like the door, we have to embrace new ideas. We have to go in a new direction. We have to have a new lifestyle. And that new lifestyle, to really balance out the scales, is going to be less patriarchal, just focused on money and sex. Money, sex, money, sex, money, sex, money, sex, money, sex, money, sex, build, 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 money, sex, build, 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 okay? Which is not all the patriarch, but kind of more of the destructive habits of the patriarch, okay? So we're gonna start to see the matriarch. She's gonna be encouraged by planet Earth, Mother Gaia, to step up and to be a leader. And women are a little bit afraid because we've been, in past lives for witchcraft, hung, burned, the guillotine. But now men are recognizing the value of such medicine, of such healing modalities that have been stored within feminine's DNA for so many years, centuries, thousands of years. That healing modality that is now, we are moving into the forefront, and we are moving into positions of leadership, either in justice, either in entertainment, either in education. Everything. We're stepping up into these positions because we have it in our aura when we are really practicing our native medicine, our native healing modalities, to basically give us a chance on planet to heal the pollution, okay, and to heal our anger, because we cannot continue with this anger. We have to move past it. We have to elevate in such a way where we elevate beyond the anger. We surmount that anger. We see the bigger picture of why that anger is there. What is the reason? What is the message? What is the assignment? What is the test of that anger? What is it showing me about myself and about what's been going on in this planet? It's that elevated understanding. It's that feminine within us that's really giving us that eagle eyes to see our anger in a new perspective. Not from stagnancy, from a place of encouragement to bring well-being and nourishment to our lives. Okay? So, and also to bring reform, to revolutionize our lives as well. So the feminine and the men and women, it's kind of, women, they represent that higher incarnation, but men have that feminine in them as well. And it's just really pushing us into having emotional, psychological well-being, okay? To have that fulfillment in our aura, that fulfillment pouring through our bloodstream, pouring through our veins, because that is what's going to get us into that dimension that we need to get into, okay? What we call that dimension of an ability to handle and manage life, okay, and to alchemize life, which is take what you were given. So if you're given like dirt, or if you're given like pollution, take what you're given and figure out a way how you can actually transmutate it and rewrite it into something higher. Do we think about that? We're just angry and like entitled to success, but no. You're an alchemist. You have to take what you're given, and you yourself have to transform it. Not I'm entitled. No, you have to transform it yourself into a higher vibrational field that then becomes a reality that you have created within the many facets of yourself, the faculties of the self, and the environment of yourself. Okay, so I'm going to leave you guys with this. It's a lot of information, but Spirit wanted me to channel about kind of prostitution and kind of the whole root of that and what's kind of been going on with women and these kinds of things. So